Hi you, I'm Olof and this is Downcountry Showdown. I had the opportunity to test the Specialized Epic Evo a few times, and I also did a quick test on the Trek Top Fuel 8, and will also get a test bike from Trek shortly for a more comprehensive test. I also managed to get my hands on the brand new Scott Spark 910, and this video is all about comparing this holy downcountry trinity. First we need to define what the downcountry bike is. This isn't an exact science, but I define a downcountry bike a cross-country bike with some extra travel and a more progressive geometry. When it comes to ride-out speed on the flats, these bikes are more cross-country bikes than trail bikes. Here is a quick overview of our three contenders. The Specialized Epic Evo derives from the Specialized cross-country racer, the Epic. The Epic Evo has still got the same lightweight carbon front triangle as the Epic, but the rear triangle is different and is missing the proprietary brain suspension parts. The suspension travel has increased with 20 mm in the front and 10 mm in the rear. Here in Sweden, start from around 3,900 euros. And if you can afford it, a S-Works model can be yours for 10,500 euros more. The 2022 Trek Top Fuel has evolved from previous year's cross-country Top Fuel to a more lightweight trail bike. Focus is on fun according to Trek's marketing campaign, and it eats into the Trek Fuel EX base. More suspension and definitely a slacker geometry makes this something very different than what the Top Fuel once was. You can have an aluminium Top Fuel for as little as 2,600 euros or splash your cash on a top tier Top Fuel 9.9 XX1 AXS. That's a mouthful. The brand new Scott Spark is probably the most innovative bike in the trio, making the other contenders look a bit old with their exposed rear suspension. But don't let the sleek lines fool you. This is probably the most capable of the three bikes, at least if you take a look at the suspension travel. For cross-country racing enthusiasts, there's the Scott Spark RC, which has got a 10 mm shorter fork, but is still very much in the downcountry segment, I would say, even if it's marketed as the Nino Schurter approved cross-country racer.
Goes to Nino Schurter! Schurter, wow, how close was that?
Perhaps downcountry is the new cross-country. Just a thought. Geometry really is what defines the downcountry bike. These bikes have almost got an enduro-like silhouette, crowned by a slack head angle at around 66 degrees. The only difference is the suspension travel and how you sit on the bike. Let me explain. I recently tested a hardcore enduro bike, the 180mm Husqvarna Hardcross 8, and it made all difficult trails so easy to ride in steep and rough terrain. I didn't have a clue about the geometry and was very surprised to find that it only had a 66-degree head angle and pretty tame numbers everywhere else. Add 27.5-inch wheels on that and you can understand how shocked I was to learn that the most competent MTB I've ever ridden was something I didn't expect at all. You see, slackening the head angle comes with consequences, and that spells a lower stack height and an effective shorter reach as well. A short suspension travel means that your body weight is pushed forward on a bike, and that is, according to me, the key difference between a proper trail bike and a downcountry bike. To compensate for a low front end, some downcountry bikes are fitted with a shorter stem and with handlebars with some rise to them. That doesn't mean that the concept is bad though. The bikes are almost as fast as cross-country racers on, for example, a XCO track, but still when you're going down steep terrain, that over-the-bar feeling is always present. What saves you from tipping over is that slack head angle and some extra travel up in the front. Here are some key measurements of our bikes in size large and with any flip chip setting in the lower position. Of course, bike sizes between brands are somewhat incomparable, but for the sake of argument, let's do it anyway. Worth mentioning is that the Trek Top Fuel is a bigger bike, both when it comes to wheelbase and reach, but still the chainstays are the shortest of the three bikes. It has also got a very low standover height, making me believe that this is the most trail-oriented bike. Until I look at the stack height, which is the lowest. We'll get back to that in a moment. Both the BB drop and the BB height are lower on the Scott Spark, which is interesting. Does it have anything to do with that integrated shock, which is a result of Scott buying the company Bolt Cycles not long ago? Unfortunately, I only had this bike for a very short period of time, so I can't say this is something I noticed, but I thought it was worth mentioning. The design makes the other bikes look like relics from the past, in my opinion. A very long seat tube makes the bike take one step back from being a downhill-friendly trail bike. The low weight is partly explained by the lightweight wheels and thin cross-country tires, which further indicates that the focus is more on cross-country than trail. So I was thinking if the geometry of the Scott Spark 900 sits somewhere in between the Specialized Epic Evo and the new Stumpjumper, so let's throw that bike into the equation. The 2021 Stumpjumper has only got 10mm more travel both front and rear, but even I feel comfortable riding this bike down red trails, something that I hesitate to do with the Epic Evo at least. I think you, even with the naked eye, can see that this is a different category of bike, especially the front end. This is a proper trail bike. The Epic Evo is the oldest of these three bikes and the most conservative. It does look more like a cross-country race bike, maybe a marathon bike ready to take on big races such as the Cape Epic, but that race was won on a normal Epic though. I have ridden this bike a few times by now, and it does feel like a more playful and flickable version of a cross-country racer. Let's continue and dive into the cockpits. The Trek Top Fuel makes up for its low stack height with a different handlebar and stem than the two other bikes. Playing around with the spacers will further move the front end into the trail territory. The cockpit looks almost identical to the Top Fuel's bigger brother, the Fuel EX. A big plus is a knock block that has got a wider range in the 2022 edition. The Specialized cockpit looks very cross-country in comparison, with only a minimal rise and a longer stem. I've read in forums that Epic Evo owners have changed their handlebars to riser handlebars, simply to avoid the handlebars to come in contact with that expensive carbon frame. We find the most futuristic and well-integrated cockpit with Scott, where all of the cables are routed through the Synchros Fraser stem. You're pretty much stuck with the Synchros components if you want to keep those cables in place, but it does look neat. Wheels and tires are good indicators of the intention of use of these bikes. As I said earlier, the Scott Spark setup is definitely on the cross-country side of the spectrum, and I wouldn't want to crash through a harsh rock garden at speed with the Scott Spark without worrying if the tires, or the wheels for that matter, would hold up. I did test the Specialized Epic Evo through some muddy red trails in the practice session for the Swedish Enduro Cup, but I wasn't very comfortable here either. I'm sure a more skilled rider than me wouldn't have any problems. Since I'm a bit of a chicken, I had to walk down the sketchy and slippery bits. The front tire was actually quite okay, but I had no traction whatsoever in the rear tire, and after slipping around with both wheels at the same time, I came to the conclusion that a different bike, or at least different tires, would make a world of difference for me. In the dry though, this bike is super fast and probably on par if not faster than the Scott Spark. The Trek Top Fuel has got the trusted Bontrager Line Comp 30, which I personally don't have too much experience with, so I had to do some research on them. These wheels have gotten a major overhaul from 2021 with both a stronger alloy material used from the Trek factory racing downhill rims, as well as a new and stronger profile. The tires on the 2022 Top Fuel are the Bontrager XR4 Team Issue, which differs from previous year's XR3, which is more of a cross-country tire. Needless to say perhaps, but when it comes to wheels and tires, the Trek Top Fuel is more focused on grip and to tackle rougher sections than to take Strava comps. Wheels and tires is also a big part in how much a bike weighs in total. And comparing these three bikes that I've tested, the chart looks like this. Okay, we're comparing two carbon bikes with an aluminium bike here. I will compare the top tier versions of each bike, and they're all carbon bikes. Note that these weights should be taken with a big pinch of salt. As far as I can tell, it's a featherlight frame and rims on the Specialized that makes it the only bike in the trio to go under 10 kilos in weight. And just for fun, let's compare the lowest spec versions of each bike, where both the Scott and the Trek are aluminium bikes. To conclude, I see 2 race bikes and 1 bike that takes 1 step closer to being a trail bike. I think the point with the Specialized and Scott bikes spells versatility. They can be found in more types of terrains and still be extremely competitive in races. The Trek addresses the everyday all-round rider that wants a bit from both worlds. Despite its weight and grippier tires, it pedals incredibly well uphill, with very little pedal bob, and does not feel as sluggish as longer travel trail bikes. If it wasn't for the fragile wheels and tires, I would say that Scott is also halfway into the trail bike territory because of its forgiving suspension. There's a difference in travel between the Scott Spark and the Epic Evo that even I can notice. The Specialized Epic Evo is more of a race bike with fewer compromises. It's very light and efficient, and the suspension can take more than the amount of travel suggests. Maybe the Specialized Epic Evo and the Scott Spark RC are more equal bikes. So that's it. I hope you got something out of this video. Stay tuned for the full review of the Trek Top Fuel 9.9 if you're interested in the top-end version of the Top Fuel. So see you in the next video.